This is a map of every system in EVE Echoes, and today I'm going to be using my experience as a solo roamer to break down every single region into danger level categories. Should you fall for the bait? How quickly are you to be tackled and chased down? And is there a capital ship waiting for you on the other side of that bubble? This is going to be my complete breakdown of all null-sec as a solo PvPer. Where should you hunt for your first time? And where does your alliance stack up on the list? Let's find out. Hello pilots, and welcome back to another EVE Echoes video. Today I'm going to take a break from doing some PvP for myself to pass on some knowledge to the community of EVE Echoes. I've been doing solo PvP in the game for about a year by myself, and I've been neutral to the entire map for approximately 6 months now. So I've been in every single region, every single alliance, and I've hunted down every single person in the game at some point out in null-sec. But before we get into the complete guide, I do want to say that I understand some people are going to take this criticism a little harshly. Some areas and regions and alliances are going to be rated lower than others, but this is all based on my personal experience, the time in which I play the game, which can differ from a lot of other players, and the ships that I like to fly and hunt. So your experience may not be the exact same as mine, but these are my experiences and my ratings for what I've seen throughout the game in null-sec. So for example, if I rate a region a 4 out of 5 in danger level, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be dangerous for every single player or every single group. It just was dangerous for me in the times that I've experienced it. And likewise, if I rate something a 1 out of 5 on the danger level, that doesn't mean that you're going to run through there and do whatever you want all willy-nilly. You could run into a lot more resistance than me based on the time that you're playing, based on the players who are responding, and the ship that you like to fly. So just take this with a grain of salt, and if you have any areas that you want to improve on, this will be a good way for you to see what a neutral coming into your territory experiences when they arrive. So, how am I going to break this down into danger levels? Well, I'm going to separate this into 5 different categories. The first one being population density. This is going to be based on the size of the region that you're in and the likelihood of experiencing either a small or large amount of players per system. The second category is going to be the skill level of the pilots. And this is not really necessarily the actual skill that these pilots have in playing the game. This is going to be based on, tier 10 players, people with max level implants, people with also maybe a lot of experience in doing PvP or soloing other players. So it'll be based on basically the level of player that you're going to be expected to go against if you happen to engage somebody. Our third category is going to be baiting and trickery. This is based on people being able to, say, sit at a gate and let you attack them so that you get your combat timer, while their friends are on the other side of the gate just waiting for you to engage on that timer, and then coming through and kind of ambushing you in that way. And also it involves ships that are not necessarily AI ratting, but are PvEing or mining, that happen to have modules on them that can tackle you or drain you like a large neutralizer that you wouldn't expect a normal ratting ship to have. The fourth category I'm going to use is response time. This is the ability for the enemies to come and tackle you or engage you while you're trying to take a target out. So if you're engaged on a battleship who happen to be ratting, it's going to be the amount of time it's going to take for that alliance to organize, to call for help, and to engage you and save their partner. The last category is going to be capital ship usage. This is because not all groups in regions and alliances like to drop capital ships. Not all of them use them for gate camps, but the ones who do can use them very effectively and can usually take you out in one shot if you're a solo roamer like me. So while it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a negative thing when people use capital ships, it's something that we have to be aware of, the groups who use them more often than others. So if you're going to be running into a bubble, you probably know that there's going to be a capital ship drop on you soon as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each category and I'm going to give a rank from 1 to 5, on 1 being not so dangerous and 5 being super dangerous. And then I'm going to take the total points, anywhere from 5 to 25, take the average of that, and that'll be the final score of that region to kind of give you an idea of the danger level you would be experiencing as a solo pilot. Okay, so let's start things off with a small region in the southwest. This is period basis. This region is predominantly owned by the Nice Alliance. You will see some Kraken wandering in and some TSC from up north of period basis, but for the most part, you're just going to see this one alliance and a couple of NPC systems. So for population density, I'm going to give this region a 1. That's basically because while you would see this as normally a smaller region, so you would think people will be clustered together more, you will go through a lot of systems that have absolutely no one in them. There's not a whole lot of camera usage, and most of the population is going to be clustered around either the trading centers, the NPC stations, or the really low security systems like 0.8, 0.9. But there's still a lot of pass-through systems, and what I mean by that is there's systems with absolutely nobody in local, 2 or 3 in a row, and you can kind of like make your way through there and not have to worry about people tracking you down. As far as pirate skill level, I'm going to give this a rank of 2. That's because the players that I have engaged with in this system have been pretty average for the most part. Most of the time they won't bring the right ship to counter the ship that I'm in. They'll just kind of rush into the fight right away and try to help out as much as they can. But for the most part, they don't really sit back and think about matchups and teamwork. From my experience, they kind of just rush in and engage. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to give this region a score of 1. For the most part, I don't see a lot of gate camps going on. If you see a ship flying by, it's probably not chasing you. It's probably just autopiloting through. You might get 1 or 2 coming to find you, but nobody's going to sit on a gate and wait for you to engage. Nobody's going to have a bubble and a capital ship waiting for you. It's pretty much what you see is what you get when you're flying through this system. For response time, I'm going to give this region a 2. They aren't absolutely awful at coming and finding and tracking you down, but most of the time, if you don't poke your head into the highly populated systems, they're not even going to really know you're around. Like I mentioned previously, most of the time, if they do engage you, it's not going to be with an organized fleet. It's going to be something just thrown together at the last minute to kind of scare you away from whatever you happen to be tackling. So I give it a score of 2. And as far as capital ship usage, I'm going to score this as a 1. I very rarely see any capital ships used in this region. If I have seen them, they usually are quick to dock up, or they might be helping out on a gate camp at one of the border systems, but nothing's really going to chase you capital ship wise in this region. All right, so with those rankings, that's going to bring period basis to a 7 out of 25, or an overall danger rating of 1.4 out of 5. All right, moving north of period basis, we are going to be entering Delve. I'm going to try my best not to be biased for this region because this is where I spent most of my corporation and alliance time in the game, is in Delve. But all of these rankings are going to be just based on me being a neutral party roaming through looking for ships to kill. So that's what my rankings have to be based on. Okay, so for Delve and population density, I'm actually going to give it a score of 2. It's really large and there's a lot of corporations and people in this region, but they're very spread apart. You'll find clusters of systems that are really low security of like anywhere from 8 to 10 people in them, and then you'll go 3, 4, 5 jumps in a row and there'll be absolutely nobody in there, not even a camera. So while I think there are a lot of players in this region, they're all just very spread apart, so it's hard for them to come together and have high density for this ranking. For pilot skill level, I want to give this one a 3. And the reason why I want to do that is kind of a little bit because I know a lot of the players who are in this region and I know how they play and what they're good at. So I will see names often that I recognize and I'll know their skill level automatically. The ones that I have run into, which is actually pretty rarely because most people just dock up out here, the ones that I have run into are either really on the low end of not paying attention or just starting out, or really on the high end of being able to kick your ass. So that's just kind of where I averaged out to a score of 3 for that. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to give Delve a 1. For the most part, you're going to see the normal gate camps at the entryways into the region. K4 is a popular one, SMEB is a popular one, but other than that, there's really nothing going on to stop you from going from one end of the region to the other. There's not going to be a lot of people setting up traps, setting up bait, or responding, or basically fitting their ships out, preparing for an enemy to engage them. It's going to be what you see, what you get. For response time, I'm going to give Delve a score of 2. That is because if you do hang around too long in a highly populated system, they will swarm you and block you and lock you in. But if you're just moving from system to system, passing through, a lot of times nobody's going to be chasing you and following you and try to catch you. So not exactly a 1, but not exactly anything threatening as well. Just a score of 2. And for capital ship usage, I'm going to give Delve a score of 1. From my experience, I don't see a whole lot of capital ships. You might see one along with a gate camp, similar to down in period basis, but they aren't going to chase you with capitals. They're not going to drop a bubble in a capital on you if you engage a target. You're pretty safe from capitals as long as you're past those entry points into the region. So that's going to give Delve a final danger score of 1.8 out of 5. Moving on to the Aquarius region, I'm going to give the population density score a 1. This is another very large open region with a lot of systems, mostly owned by Meow Alliance. But for the most part, you're going to see them conjugating again near the low negative security systems, 0.8, 0.9, and a lot of pass-through systems for you to travel through freely. For the pilot skill level score, I'm going to give it a 2. I haven't run into any huge obstacles when I fight people 1 versus 1. I haven't had any 2 versus 1s or anything like that, but the ones that I have been engaged with, I've dealt with relatively easily in the ships that I like to fly, and a lot of the battleships that I have tackled, I haven't had any resistance from. As far as baiting and trickery, I'm also going to give them a 1 score. I don't really see a whole lot of gate camps going on through this system. There is one junction point that I might highlight later on that I do see a gate camp every once in a while, but for the most part, everybody just kind of stays in their dead-end systems and doesn't really come out and fight. They won't be waiting for you on a gate, and I haven't had any experiences where anybody has tried to bait me into an engagement or has surprised me with any modules on their ship then when I go to tackle them. For the response time score, I'm going to give them a 2. They do respond if you're in highly populated systems. Some of the more popular ones near the entrance to null-sec, they will have quick response time too, but because the region is so large, it seems like it's difficult for them to respond to some dead-end systems, especially if there's only 1 or 2 people in local. They usually can't get there before I take out the ship I have tackled. And finally, in regards to capital ship usage, I will put them at a 2. I might give them a 3. It's kind of like a 2.5, but I'm going to lower it to a 2 just because most of the capital ship usage that's going on is PvE related and not gate camp or track you down related. And because this is a danger level score, I'm going to put it at a 2 because those capital ships are usually pretty easily avoidable. So that's going to set Querious with a final danger level score of 1.6 out of 5. Moving up north, we're going to head into Fountain Region. And this one is a little bit tricky to rate because there are a lot of groups in this region. There's Meow, there's Ticos, there's a little bit of TSC in the lower part of Fountain, and they all kind of overlap each other and mingle interspersed. So for the most part, I'm going to have to rate this as an entire region and then maybe come back later at the end of the video and highlight a couple of key areas, but I'll just do an overall region ranking for this for now. Okay, so for population density, I'm going to give this region a score of 2. Most of the systems that I think there's going to be players in are completely empty. Then some systems that have a lot of people in local will all be docked up. And most of the systems that do have high-end traffic are going to be in the northern part of Fountain, more on the Ticos side. But as an overall region, I would rank it as a 2. For pilot skill level, I'm actually going to give this area a 4. And that's because most of the people in Ticos and in this area of Fountain are going to be in capital ships, high-end content, max level implants. If I do run into somebody, they're going to be well equipped. It's also very rare for me to find a player who's not paying attention or AI ratting in this region. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to give them a score of 3. There are some really solid gate camp areas that you have to be very careful with, and they are, from my experience, very good at tracking you down with a bubble and a capital ship at the same time. So very, very hard to maneuver your way through here freely, and some very strong choke points in Fountain. For response time, I'm going to give them a 3. I think because there's so many different alliances mixed together, they don't always have the strong intel of somebody in local as, say, an entire alliance owning an entire region such as TSC and Delve. So the communication between the alliances might not be 100%, and that might lead to a little bit more of a slower response time. But at the same time, I give them a 3 because the ones who do respond are usually very strong in their response and bringing the right ships for the counter that they need. And as far as capital ship usage, I'm going to give Fountain a 4 out of 5. In the areas of T-Coast space, I would probably give it a 5 out of 5, but because we're talking about an entire region and Meow and a little bit of TSC is mixed in there also, I have to lower it to a 4 just because the systems that those alliances own in this region don't usually have capital ships roaming around. But the T-Coast spaces are the really dangerous ones that have a lot of capital ships that you should be aware of. So I'll give it a 4 out of 5 on that. That's going to leave the region with an overall ranking of 3.2 out of 5 danger level. Moving on into the Cloud Ring region, this is predominantly owned by the Trog Alliance, and I don't have a whole lot of experience roaming this area, so I'll just go based on the little times that I have gone through here. My filaments don't tend to drop me in this space very often, but from what I've seen, population density looks like it's about a 2 out of 5. This is another very small region, so you would expect the systems to be highly populated, but for the most part, you're only going to see maybe 2 or 3 players per system with a couple of pass-throughs in between, and maybe a gate camp on the border. As far as pilot skill level, I'm going to give it a 3. I know most of the pilots of this area are probably going to have high-level implants and be up into Tech 10, battleships and capitals and all that. But for the ones that I do find ratting or PvEing or mining, they are usually not paying attention, or they're making some kind of a silly mistake that allows me to take advantage of it. For baiting and trickery, I would say that hasn't been my experience in this region. I'll rank it at about a 2 out of 5 for baiting and trickery, just because there hasn't been a lot of engagements with me tackling players, and the ones that I have tackled have been pretty much straightforward and either kill them or they get away kind of scenarios. As far as the response time, I will also give that a 3. That's just based on this fact that this is such a small region, it's actually going to be really easy for them to respond and communicate as an alliance that owns this region. So you're going to probably see players on top of you if you hang around a system for too long or if you're not passing through. So in and out real quick, otherwise they're going to definitely respond to you. And as far as capital ship usage, I'm going to give them a 3 out of 5, and that's just because I know that there's a lot of capitals out there, but I haven't experienced a lot of capitals, so I had to just go with kind of an average score on that end. That's going to leave my final danger score for the Cloud Ring region at a 2.6 out of 5. Going over into the Pure Blind region, this is going to be the region just south of Fade and over from the Cloud Ring. This is a very small region that basically only has Wolf as an alliance, but it does have some SHH overlap as well. It's actually kind of difficult to tell where this region, where Pure Blind ends and where Fade begins. For population density, I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5, and that's basically because this is a very small region, but I usually don't see a whole lot of players ratting or mining out here. Typically, I think that's because a lot of these systems are not going to be low enough security to really give those benefits of PvE and mining. So you're not going to see a whole lot of population in this area, this region. For pilot skill level, I'll give it a 2 out of 5, and that's just because, there's a reason why these systems are not as low a security level. There's going to be maybe newer players, maybe somebody just moving out into null-sec from low-sec, wanting to try a little bit harder content, but not somebody that's going to be constantly grinding fleet anomalies and stuff like that in capital ships. So I'll give it a 2 out of 5. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to give this region a 2 out of 5. I would give it a 1 out of 5, but because there's usually a gate camp of some kind in order to get from low-sec into this region, I'm going to bump it up 1 level and give it a 2 out of 5. For response time, I'm going to rank it at a 1 out of 5. Most of the times that I have tackled players in these areas, no one has come to help at all, and I pretty much am able to leave or filament away very easily. So I'll give it a 1 out of 5. And for capital ship usage, I will also give it a 1 out of 5, and that's just because I don't think capital ships tend to rat in this area very much. There's really no reason to bring a capital ship over into a 0.1, 0.2 security system. That's going to leave Pure Blind with a score of 1.4 out of 5. Moving just north up into Fade, we are going to see a mixture of SHH and Bot 5 systems. Most of these systems on a straight line are just going to be pass-throughs, but there are some heavily populated dead ends around here, so I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 for population density. For pilot skill level, I'm going to rank it at a 4 out of 5. That's just because most of the pilots that I have engaged with in this region have been very strong and countered me very well. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to go a little lower and go 2 out of 5, and that's because most of the time what you see is what you get. If you do have 3 ships chasing you, say Cinnable and a bubble ship and a capital ship, you know pretty much what they're going to do and what they're going to do with it, but that's still dangerous. So for response time, I'm going to go with a 4 out of 5. Usually once you tackle a ship in this region, or I should say once I tackle a ship in this region, people are on their way immediately. They are looking for a fight. So you will get that engagement pretty quickly. It doesn't matter if you tackle somebody in a low populated system, you will get those incoming adds on pretty quick. And for capital ship usage, I'm going to set it at a 2 out of 5. Most of the time, ships that are going to be trying to tackle you are not going to be capital ships. They're not going to set up gate camps with capital ships, but they will use them occasionally. Most of the time, this is going to be right on the border, right when you're coming in or coming from an NPC station. You might see a gate camp with a capital ship on the other side waiting for you. That's going to give Fade a final score of 3 out of 5 on the danger level. Heading into Deklin region. This is going to be a very heavily populated region, and from what I've experienced, a lot of players in every single system, including what I like to call the Iron Triangle, which I'll touch on at the end of the video as one of my hot spots to avoid. For population density, I'm going to have to give this region a 5 out of 5, and that's mostly basing it on every other region in null-sec. This one is, to me, or I've experienced, the most populated when traveling through here. Almost every system has at least 2 or 3 players in it, even the pass-through systems. For the pilot skill level, I'm going to rank it at a 4 out of 5. Most of the time I see people flying, they're going to be flying a ship that they are well built and well equipped to fly, whether that be a capital ship, a bubble ship, just a cruiser that's coming to chase you down, a worm that'll one-shot you. Yes, that's happened to me. If you engage a ship up in Deklin, you can pretty much be guaranteed that that guy's going to be prepared to fight you. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to set it at a 3 out of 5. Most of the time that I die in Deklin, it's because I ran into a bubble, or I engaged a ship on one side of the gate and then a bubble came through on the other side to take me out. So I will give it about a 3 out of 5 on average. The times that I haven't died have been mostly because I've been trying to fight something I shouldn't have been, but for the most part, 3 out of 5 seems about average and correct for this. For response time, I'm going to give Deklin a 5 out of 5. Every time that I've engaged somebody else has been on their way almost immediately. And a lot of times when I enter anomalies or mining belts, there's more than one player in that belt or anomaly. So they always have backup, and they're very close and very well communicative to where it's hard not to engage in a 2 versus 1 when I'm in this region. For capital ship usage, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I would go 5 out of 5, but it seems like they have players that tend to not want to use capitals, but only use them when they really need to. So the capitals are there, but they aren't going to drop them on you every chance they get. And most of the time that I have experienced gate camps, it hasn't been with a capital ship waiting. They've only brought it later on if they needed to. So I would give it about a 4 out of 5. I know they exist and I know they're prevalent and they're dangerous, but they usually will not use them as a direct response unless needed. So overall, that's going to set Deklin at a 4.2 out of 5 danger level on my list. All right, up at the top in the far north, we have Branch Region. This is predominantly owned by the VVV Alliance. For population density, I'm going to rate them at a 2. There are some groups that tend to hang around the trading center and some dead-end systems, but for the most part, this is a lot of pass-through systems and empty pathways through the region. For pilot skill level, I'm going to rate it at a 2 out of 5. I've run into a lot of pilots who are either AFK, AI ratting, or making kind of silly mistakes and like not going back through a gate when they had their timer down, things like that. So I have found a lot of hauling ships as well up in this area, so I'll give it about a 2 out of 5 for pilot skill level. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to list this region at a 1 out of 5. I don't see a lot of gate camps going on. There won't be a lot of traps when you enter a dead-end system where you go back to go out and there's a bubble there already. And most of the ships that you tackle are going to be either just pure PvE built or just mining ships that have no way to defend themselves. For response time, I will list this region at a 2 out of 5. That's mostly because the players tend to hang out in the same system. So it's either going to have a lot of players in the system or absolutely nobody. So when you do engage a player like a miner or a ratter, there's going to be other players in the system to respond quickly. However, if you catch somebody alone in a system, they're going to have very poor response time. So I have to lower it down to a 2. And as far as capital ship usage, I would say it's probably at a 1 out of 5. I don't think I have found a capital ship yet up here. It's possible they just don't use them as PvP response or as gate camp tools, but I don't think I have seen a capital ship up here in this region. So that will leave Branch with a final score of 1.6 out of 5 danger level. Moving over to the Tanal region, this is going to be Northern AOA or AOS. There are a lot of low security systems up here, so you're going to see a high congregation of player base. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 on population density up here in the north. As far as pilot skill level, I'm going to go down to a 2 out of 5. While there are going to be a lot of players up here in these systems, I think a lot of them are either AI ratting or, I don't know, maybe botting. Let's just say they have really, really quick warp away times when you enter local. But even with that low player score that I said, on baiting and trickery, I'm going to give this region a 5 out of 5. It seems like every time I start roaming around this area, I start to feel safe and something pops up out of nowhere to blow me out of the sky. Whether it's an incredible gate camp trap that I didn't see coming, or an orca baiting in an asteroid belt for a capital ship in a bubble to arrive, I have been trapped here on many occasions. For response time, I'm going to give this region a 3 out of 5. If I am able to track down an AFK AI ratting ship, I can usually take it out without anybody coming. But if I tackle somebody who is an active player, or if I'm roaming around this region for too long, they will have a response to meet me and it will be very strong. And finally, for capital ship usage, I'm going to put this region at a 5 out of 5. I wanted to do 4 out of 5, but gosh darn it, every single time I engage with a fiend on a gate, it's a capital ship on the other side. Every time I try to tackle an orca, it's a capital ship that warps in to try and take me out. So I see a lot of capital ships up here in Tenal. So that leaves Tenal with an overall danger rating of 3.8 out of 5. For my next rating, I'm actually going to group up Vale of the Silent and Geminate together as one region. This area is owned by AOX and AOS, which is essentially the same entity, just split into 2 different alliances. And for the most part, their scores would be roughly the same anyway, so I'm just going to group it together. As far as population density, I'm going to classify this as a 1. I have the hardest time finding any players in this region. Whether it's Vale of the Silent or Geminate, both, I go multiple tens of systems with absolutely nobody in it except for maybe a pod camera, and it just drains my time, and often I will just filament out and not want to deal with it. Looking at the pilot skill level, I'm going to rate it a 2 out of 5. This is mostly because the pilots I do engage are relatively well equipped, such as like a fiend with a capital ship behind it, but when I go so many systems and the only thing I can find is an AI ratter, I have to kind of lower the score to a 2 out of 5. When it comes to baiting and tackling, I'm also going to give this area a 1 out of 5. Very rarely do I run into a gate camp in these regions, and very rarely does anybody set up a trap or have anything fitted to their ship that surprises me. It's usually just AI ratting, AFK players, or just dead systems altogether. In regards to response time, I'm also going to give this a 1 out of 5. Usually the pilots that I do find that are AFK or AI ratting, I can kill them without any issues whatsoever. Nobody really seems to come and chase me when I'm roaming through this area. Part of it might be because it's just so large that nobody can catch up to me, but I usually don't get chased or blocked or locked down by any ships in these two regions. For capital ship content, I would say there's barely any in this area. There's a couple of low-end security systems near NPC stations that I can check out, but for the most part, I don't see capital ships used out here. I think part of the reason is there's just so much travel time in between each system and so much space that you don't really want to use a slow-moving ship anyway, so I wouldn't doubt it if there's barely any capitals up here. Most of them, I would assume, have moved either north or south. So I'll just go ahead and put this down as a 1 out of 5 for capital ship usage as well. That's going to bring the overall danger level score to a 1.2 out of 5. I'll just summarize you right now. This is probably my least favorite area of the game of null-sec to try and hunt in, because it's just so big, so empty, and very hard to find anybody to try and take down. Moving down into the cache region, I'm going to go ahead and give this a population density rating of 3 out of 5. Most of the systems that I travel through, I find players to engage, and there's a lot of dead-end systems, a lot of pockets of players that you can try and take down. For the pilot skill level, I'll give this a 2 out of 5. I don't rarely engage any pilots that want to fight. I usually engage them because I'm trying to tackle them while they're ratting. So I have to give it a 2 out of 5 just because I haven't had a whole lot of matchups of PvP fit ships. So maybe that's just a little bit not enough experience to tell to give a solid rating, but from the experiences that I have had, I'd have to rate it 2 out of 5. As far as baiting and tricking, I'd probably give it a 2 out of 5 as well. There's not a whole lot going on up here. There's really no gate camps to speak of because it's so deep in null-sec that usually they can see you coming anyway. There won't be any bubbles to block your way. They usually haven't tried to trap me when I try to escape from their pockets. And it's, for the most part, pretty straightforward. You go in there, you check it out. If there's any enemies, you go and engage. If not, then you walk out. For the response time, I'm going to rate this region a 3 out of 5. That's mostly because when I do engage a ship or a high populated system, like going deep into a low security pocket, they do tend to swarm and engage and call for reinforcements pretty well. Regions like this is one of the reasons why I tend to fit a little bit more offensive, just so that I can take out those PvE ratting targets quickly before help comes and arrives. As far as capital ship usage, I'd have to give this region a 2 out of 5. I usually don't see them out there ratting fleet anomalies. I don't really catch up to them when I'm using my scanner, and I haven't had a lot of issues with them sitting on gate camps. I think part of the reason is this is such a off to the side region where it's not really connected to low-sec as much, that you can get deep into the far east of it and not have to worry about people setting up things like gate camps or tricks or anything like that, especially not using capital ships for these purposes. Those are going to be more towards the edge and the border towards low-sec and not deep into the region. So that's going to leave Cache's danger rating at a 2.4 out of 5. Well, it turns out this video is going to be way too long, so I'm going to have to separate this into a part 1 and part 2. But let's take a look and see so far what we have for the regions on the list. Holding the top spot so far, we have Deklin at 4.2, Tenal is coming in second at 3.8, Fountain at a 3.2, Fade 3.0, Cloud Ring 2.6, Cache at a 2.4, Delve 1.8, Querious and Branch at 1.6, Period Basis 1.4, and a combination of Vale of the Silent and Geminate at 1.2. So stay tuned for part 2 when I cover the other 14 regions left and we find out who makes it to the top of my null-sec solo PvP danger list. Feel free to comment down below if you agree or disagree, and if you've had any experiences in certain regions that make it more dangerous than others. Go ahead and share your experiences. Until next time, fly safe and have fun.